Good evening. Welcome to the City of Opa-Locka Virtual Regular Commission meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Bass,
Here.
Commissioner Burke,
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Present.
Mayor Pygott.
I am here. Madam Attorney, could you read the protocols that govern this virtual meeting?
Sure. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technologies such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 125B, 120.545B2 of the Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Vice Mayor Davis, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Kelly, and Mayor Pygott. An opportunity was given to the public to email the city clerk prior to this commission meeting, and the city clerk will state for the records at the appropriate time whether there have been any questions, comments, concerns on items you will hear on this evening's meeting agenda. This meeting is being streamed live at www.youtube.com/user/City of Opa-Locka.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Commissioner Kelly, could you lead us in invocation?
Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you, God, for the great city of Opa-Locka. We thank you for our world. We thank you for our nation. We ask, oh God, that you look on mankind everywhere. Look on those impacted, oh God, by COVID-19. Continue to bless our city, oh God. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Manager, lead us in a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which will stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any awards, proclamations, and acknowledgements?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? All right, moving on to the approval of consent agenda. Do I have any pulls, deletions, or deferrals?
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor?
I would like to pull item number 1 for discussion.
Noted. Anyone else?
And Mr. Mayor,
Mm,
just for the record, there was a replacement resolution that was sent via email this afternoon that would replace the resolution that's in the packet, or 13-1.
13-1, the one that
Correct.
Vice Mayor,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
the one that Vice Mayor just pulled. That's
Correct.
the replacement. Thank you for noting that for the record. Any other pulls, deletions, or deferrals?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
I'd like to pull number 4, please.
All right. Anyone else? All right, let's move. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move it, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bass. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Davis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Kelly. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
A motion to approve the virtual special commission meetings for April 30th, 2020.
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Bass,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Davis. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Do I have a motion to approve the virtual regular commission meeting minutes for June 24th, 2020?
Move
Move
it.
it. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly, second by Commissioner Bass. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Madam Clerk, do we have a report from District 1 or 2?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Could you state do we have any public presentations?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, now it's time for Citizens Forum. Madam Clerk, could you go over the protocol for Citizens Forum and also state whether or not we have any comments at the moment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the public had an opportunity to submit public comments for this meeting up until 5 p.m. this afternoon via email at publiccomments@opalockafl.gov or by calling 786-618-2636 and leaving a pre-recorded message. At this time, I have 2 public comments.
You may proceed, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the first one is in reference to agenda item 1 on the consent agenda, charter amendment amending section 4.7C of the charter of the city of Opa-Locka, Florida to allow for the adoption of budget related issues by resolution rather than by ordinance. And it reads as follows, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ashley Hepburn. I reside at 1156 Sesame Street, apartment 1A, Opa-Locka, Florida. I am opposed to the charter amendment because it further hinders the accountability of local government to the people and the citizens it serves. The purpose of making the approval of budget-related issues ordinances as opposed to resolutions. An ordinance requires 2 public hearings and provides the citizens the greatest amount of opportunity to give input on an item that affects their finances. Budget issues affect people and their pocketbook and therefore should bear much public debate, public scrutiny, and public discourse as possible. Although Florida statutes 166.241 does state the governing body of each municipality shall adopt a budget each fiscal year. The budget must be adopted by ordinance or resolution unless otherwise specified in the respective municipality's charter. In the state of Florida, most local governments approve their budget issues by ordinance, and it has been the norm. Therefore, I am against changing it, especially for the city of Opa-Locka, which has an oversight board. It's in a financial crisis, and as a resident, I believe more accountability and transparency is good. My question to the City Commission is, why would you not want more public input in the decisions which the City Commission makes? If the issue is you're not getting input now, then maybe more effort should be placed on public engagement and restricting public engagement. I thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion as a resident of the great city of Opa-Locka. Thank you, Ashley Hepburn. And then the second one, Mr. Mayor, let me just pull that up. Okay, the second public comment reads as follows. Good afternoon. My name is Manny Barras, and I own three commercial properties in Opa-Locka, Florida. The addresses are 13081 Northwest 43rd Avenue, Unit 5, Unit 7, and Unit 8, Opa-Locka, Florida 33054. Please accept this letter as our formal notice of protest for raising the millage rate to 9.8000 mills for computation of ad valorem taxes for the city of Opa-Locka, Florida. As a commercial property owner in the city of Opa-Locka, we feel that the current millage rate is fair, and we ask that you please review the assessment. Furthermore, we ask you to take into consideration the unfortunate circumstances of our state and entire country and to defer this decision to raise the ad valorem tax millage rate. Sincerely, Manny Veras. And that concludes the public comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anyone has any statements for any responses for Citizens Forum?
Mr. Mayor,
Kelly?
I just want to commend both of the business owner and the resident for bringing their comments forward. I won't get into the comments of Ms. Hepburn or whoever, I think that's the name I heard, because we're going to discuss that item. But I do agree we need to figure out a way to get more public engagement. I know we've been working on that, but we do need to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you as well to the residents that provided the public comments. To the first public comment about the millage rate. As you know, the millage rate is something that I've advocated, and most of us have on the commission for some time now. Of course, we're in a financial emergency, which makes difficult decisions. But the millage rate was 9.8% the previous fiscal year, so we're not raising it, but we are keeping it consistent given the financial uncertainty of the next fiscal year. As it relates to Mrs. Hepburn comment, referring to, I guess, passing the budget as an ordinance, as a resolution, as opposed to traditionally how it's been happening as an ordinance. I too shared those concerns because I do know, ordinances provide opportunity for two public, hearings. So it gives a considerable amount of time for the community to weigh in on items, especially items that are very robust, like a city's budget. But I won't delve too deep in it. I'll wait till we get to the discussion item. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, I also want to piggyback on Commissioner Kelly and thanking those two residents, a resident and business owner, for taking the time to actually utilize the public comments at opalockafl.gov to ensure that your voice is heard. We need to make sure that continues to happen within the city of Opa-Locka. We are here as a government trying to make sure that everyone has their voice, and that's why we allocate this time. So please continue to do so. We really appreciate those thoughts and those comments. In regards to the budget, I believe that item was pulled, so we will be discussing that further. And I know we approve the millage rate through the consent agenda, and it lends to exactly what Vice Mayor Davis mentioned. We are currently in a financial crisis. We are not raising it. We're maintaining it at the same levels. And we need to do that in order to get out of this financial crisis as soon as possible. COVID has hit this government just as much as well, I wouldn't say just as much, but it's hit the government and business owners and residents. All of us are hurting, and we are trying to figure this out together. So we're hoping that with this 9.8 millage, we can have the funds in order to do what we need to do to continue to improve our industrial areas and our infrastructure and many other things that you will see discussed in the budget as we continue to go through the process. So keep abreast of what's going on so that you know how we're actually making sure we spend those dollars prudently and for the benefit of all of us. So thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for reading those comments. With that, let us move on. I'll conclude public comment. And let's move on to our action items. Madam Attorney.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-Locka, Florida, approving, setting forth, and submitting to the electorate proposed charter budget amendments to specifically amend Article 4, Section 4.5B to allow for the annual budget adoption, Section 4.7A to allow for supplemental appropriation, and 4.7C to allow for budget amendment during the fiscal year by resolution rather than by ordinance, calling and providing for a referendum at the November 3rd, 2020 general election, further directing the city clerk to cause a certified copy of the hearings resolution to be delivered to the Supervisor of Elections of Miami-Dade County, Florida, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move it for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly,
Second for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
second by Vice Mayor Davis. The floor is open. I think Vice Mayor, you pulled the item, so you can go first, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to kind of echo the concerns aligned with the comment that was provided earlier. My real problem with it, I understand that it might make things, I guess, a lot easier on staff as far as the budget process and implementing that timeline. But in my opinion, moving beyond an ordinance and to the resolution as a process, it takes away valuable time and input that the community ultimately provides. So I for one would not be in support of the change as is. I understand why it makes sense, I guess, from a staff perspective. My opinion is to kind of make things easier on our residents. So whether it's an extra meeting to get an ordinance passed, I for one would be in support of it. Also, I understand that Miami-Dade County, I know they're one of those entities that we spoke about that actually passed their budget as an ordinance. And I do know oftentimes we coordinate with the county, or we at least want to be in alignment with them from a policy perspective. I do also realize that the recommendation came from staff. I just wanted to, through the mayor to the manager, have you state, I guess, your rationale and your perspective on recommending this process.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Manager,
Mr. Vice Mayor, through the mayor.
you have the floor, Mr. Manager.
Procedurally, this makes our process a little bit more streamlined and easier to get budget amendments done due to the fact that the city is in a financial emergency and the state oversight committee, the financial oversight board oversees the city's actions. It was suggested last year that we do several budget amendments a year in order to adjust for projects that come up, monies that come in at different times of the year. If there's a overspend in budget in regards to issues that we have on an everyday basis, a pump station needing to be repaired that was not budgeted for to be repaired, a road project, some type of emergency that occurs. And we even go to the point, even talking about a hurricane preparation, supplies in regards to hurricane and various other items that are typically placed in a reserve fund. Last year when our budget was done, the state of Florida placed a lot of monies in reserves and did not approve those dollars to go into specific budget line items. And so for this year, we're moving money out those reserves and placing them in specific budget line items through a budget amendment process. I do appreciate the comments and concerns that were brought up by our resident as well as our commission. But one piece of information was not shared is that every budget amendment, every budget approval goes through the state of Florida and it goes through their approval process as well prior to that budget being implemented. So because we're in financial emergency, there are multiple layers of review. All we're trying to do is reduce a couple of layers of review so it can get to the state faster so they can do their review, hopefully within 30 days. And we don't have to have work stopped. We don't have to have work stoppages, or we don't have to have situations of issues going on in town where we need to move monies from one account to another. And it literally takes a month process to do. And I'm talking about emergent issues, 1 month to do. The state does not want us to go back to the old ways of finding the first line item that has money and using that line item and then replacing the money through a budget amendment and taking from Peter to pay Paul. They actually they want us to do the budget process in an appropriate way. So there is a methodology to this request. Just know anything that occurs, it requires a budget amendment now, takes about a month to get passed. It has to be published by the clerk, as well as we have to wait at least 30 days for the state to review and approve. So if there's anything that may come up that's not currently budgeted for, or that's in reserves because we didn't have substantiating documentation during budget time, it can literally take a month and a half to 2 months to get those expenditures approved to get done. So, I mean, it is a methodology to it, and we do have a second line of review, and that is the state of Florida, who reviews all our financial transactions ever since we've been in financial emergency.
All right. Vice Mayor, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I mean, I guess I get the rationale behind it. Of course, it makes things a lot easier and it lessens the load and the burden that's ultimately been placed on staff. Again, my concern is, the level of transparency and just making sure that we have an open form of government and our residents do have the ongoing opportunity, to engage, and especially something as important as our budget process. I mean, I hear the concerns of the state. I know that, they ultimately have to dot our I's and, cross our T's from a finance standpoint. I hear you loud and clear, Mr. Manager. But I guess I'm still challenged. As to, not leaving our community out of the picture. So I'll just lay back and hear from some of my colleagues. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, I appreciate your passionate explanation. I won't support this at all. I didn't like it with just the first line. I definitely don't like it with the new one, with broke it down in 3 places. Our first line, in my opinion, of transparency and oversight is to the residents. And to me, when you take that away and actually only give them one opportunity, if that, when it comes to taxpayer dollars, I have a real challenge. I don't think we've reached the level yet of our residents and our community trusting us enough to say, okay, through a resolution, you can make these changes, to the budget. I recognize the challenge on, emergencies may come up, but the reality is if it's that much of an emergency, you're gonna make a decision anyway and come back to the commission as need be. I understand that there's challenges maybe even with advertising and such, but I'm not of the opinion at this moment we need to take away that from the taxpayers. I don't think there's a comfort level that we are doing what we should do. I think we're getting there, but I don't think it's there yet. And even though the state does review everything that we do, I still think the taxpayers, because it's their dollars, deserve to see that. And I've always been challenged with budget amendments because I think it allows staff, knowing that there's a budget amendment can come up, to correct, add, readjust. I think they need to be a little more diligent on the front end. And I've seen that recently, Mr. Manager, with certain things where staff are really taking some initiative to do and go think out of the box on various things. So I think if that's the mindset on some things, can be on as you develop your budget, as you develop how you spend your dollars, even notwithstanding emergencies. So I'm not going to support this. I think that we need to, at this point, keep the structure where it is and allow the residents to weigh in, especially now with COVID-19 and not being able to meet in person. As you can see, we hardly get any public input. And when you start talking about a budget amendments, moving dollars around, et cetera, it can happen so fast. And although the state may, review it, they're not the residents. They're not the ones in the community that are going to really be impacted by whatever decision that is made. So I understand, as the Vice Mayor said, a little rationale in your thinking, but I couldn't support it at this moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr.
right.
Mayor, I would like to say something after everybody's completed.
All right. Mr. Manager, I know that during our agenda briefing, I brought up those concerns, one of which was stated about the financial impact of this. Could you please state that, understanding anything that was maybe left out to give a complete picture of why the staff is proposing this? I know timing is one thing. I remember hearing something about financial impact of this.
I'll let the budget director speak on that. Mr. Anathan.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Commission. One first point I'd like to make is that even under this process where a budget is passed by resolution, there's still going to be 2 hearings. The state trim process requires that. The first notice goes out on the trim notice, and then the second hearing is advertised. So in that case, you definitely, even if you pass by resolution, you're still going to have 2 hearings. So you're not going to lose anything there. In terms of financial impact, it's, well, let me, if I may address 2 other things, if I may, as long as I'm talking. The statement was made, this was to make staff's job easier. That's not really so. And if I can just give you an example of why I was a proponent of this. You have a project at 2105 Alabama, the SEP building. And it became apparent that some change orders were going to be necessary. And to do the change orders, we had to do a budget amendment, which was one agenda item. Then we had to do a second agenda item a month later. And then they had to come back and do a request for the change order once the budget was in place. If it's done by resolution, that would have all been done in the first agenda item. The budget amendment would have been there, and it would have been coupled with the request for the additional money for the change order. So it's not to make staff's job easier, it's to make the city more nimble and be able to respond. In response to the residents' comment, my experience has been more do it by resolution than ordinance. That's just a sample one, but that's been my experience. To address the question directly as the fiscal impact, it's not a major impact. The fee to get on the ballot is somewhere around $5,200. Over time, we would save every now and then the cost of advertising. So to directly answer that question, it's not a major consideration in terms of this agenda item.
Thank you. I will echo the concerns of my colleagues. Within our charter, this is a charter amendment. When this city was founded over 94 years ago, we decided that in order to ensure that there'll be a transparency in this government, that when laws are changed, it requires ordinance, and also when our budget, which is our fiscal responsibility and commitment to the residents on what we're going to do with their tax dollars, and business owners, so with their tax dollars, that it will take 2 times in order for that to pass. And any changes made in between that time would also be noticed, and give our residents and business owners and everyone opportunity to comment at those 2 times. I am of the opinion to ensure that that continues to operate, because this is a charter change. This is something that would continue on unless it is changed back for generations to come. And based upon where we are as a city with this financial crisis, this is not the first time we've been in a financial crisis. And yes, we do have the State Oversight Board that is guiding us and assisting us and overseeing us with our finances, but our residents are the ultimate overseers of us. And I want to make sure that they continue to have that opportunity. So that is my position on this item and where we are at the moment. Do you have any other considerations or thoughts before we call for the vote?
Mr. Manager, if I may.
Oh yeah, Mr. Manager.
Due to the fact that this was a staff recommendation and ultimately I represent the staff being the city manager and that communication between staff and the city commission, this is a referendum item. If the residents don't want the change, they can vote not to have the change at the ballot boxes. I think for us to make that determination at this phase doesn't provide the staff the benefit of the doubt that they're requesting. Again, you all approving this, all you're doing is approving it to be placed on the ballot. The people of Opa-Locka should be allowed to speak on the matter, just like the young lady left her public comment. Just my opinion, and I'm done with the subject.
Right. Just to make sure we're clear, as we stated, our residents did weigh in on this and during this opportunity during Citizens Forum. And as duly elected members of the residents, we are here to be that voice. And it is also going to be something that is put on the ballot, which means it has to be championed. Staff don't champion things on the ballot. That will be the duty of us as representatives to educate and let them know what is on the ballot, to ensure that they understand what it is, and to advocate for it. And it looks like the majority of us right now that have spoken clearly said that this is something that we don't see appropriate. If there are other considerations, I would strongly encourage staff moving forward to make sure that we are clear about those recommendations and how the impact that it would be, so that we can make those decisions with that in mind. So thank everyone for their discussion and points. If
Mr.
there's
Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly.
thank you. Mr. Manager, I let me just say this. Your staff made some comments in reference and gave one example of 2105 about the time frame. I didn't want to go into detail, but there's other situations that have occurred over the last year where, in my opinion, staff had to move differently. We wouldn't even had budget amendments. So I really didn't like the idea of bringing in one example to prove this point about timing, et cetera, because there's several others where where staff had have done what they should have done, in my opinion, do diligently. You wouldn't have had to even come for budget amendments. But as the mayor said, as a duly elected representative of the people, I would hate to have to go out and champion something against the administration or what have you when I don't feel it's best for the citizens. I do understand it's a referendum item and the voters will be heard, but that's why they put us here, in order to let their voice be heard on issues. And I think from this perspective, that's where I stand, but I appreciate the passion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. There's no further comments on this item. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Davis,
No.
Commissioner Kelly,
No.
Commissioner Bass,
No.
Commissioner Burke,
No.
Mayor Pygott,
No.
motion fails.
All right, Madam Attorney.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, we resolution, I think
13-4, I believe.
Yes.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-Locka, Florida, authorizing the city manager to piggyback the Miami-Dade County contract with H&R Paving, Inc. for qualified professional services for the installation of a new sidewalk in the town center area in the city of Opa-Locka in an amount not to exceed $338,139.75 in a contract form acceptable to the city attorney, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for an effective date. This is sponsored by the city manager.
I'll move it for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly,
Second for discussion.
second by Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Kelly, you pulled the item. You may.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, could you briefly explain what this exactly would entail?
Commissioner, I'll actually yield to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Austin.
Commissioner Kelly, this is to install 2.6 miles of new sidewalk in the downtown area near the Robert Ingram Elementary School to allow for more pedestrian traffic and connectivity to our mass transit infrastructure. It's a part of the Smart phase one of the SMART plan to allow us to be connected to, readily connected to mass transit.
Okay, could you say it again? You're connecting Robert Ingram to,
Right now, no sidewalks exist in their vicinity.
right?
So this is to allow for more sidewalks. This is the phase one of our sidewalk installation.
Okay, and could you briefly just, I guess, say what would be phase two? Because when this, with some of the residents seeing this as sidewalk in an area that's not really, although it's residential, you know, they're kind of wondering why they're not getting the sidewalk, or that area is not getting the sidewalk, as opposed to we're spending dollars in this area. That's why I'm bringing it up.
This area was chosen because it's the closest to our mass transit hub, being the Tri-Rail station. But the sidewalk initiative is going to be rolled out citywide. When it's completed, it's going to be a $3 million project to have sidewalks citywide.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion on this item? Want to thank staff and also this commission. Is something we put in our budget for many years. The residents have been asking for sidewalk throughout the city of Opa-Locka, and this is one of the first steps in order to do that. So much respect for staff for putting information together and ensuring that what we are doing is representative of the rest of what our residents want. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing these sidewalks come online as soon as possible. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Kelly,
You have to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Piggott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Madam Attorney.
Are we going to be discussing 14.6?
Yes, it's the ordinance.
Okay. 13.6, I mean.
I believe it's where we're on right now is the ordinance part of our agenda, because we just went through the consent agenda.
Okay, I was just bringing up the audit committee because those
Oh,
persons have to be selected today also.
that is very true. So even though we pass it in the consent agenda, we have to. All right, go ahead and read it into the record, madam.
Okay. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Opa-Locka, Florida, appointing members to the audit committee and providing for an effective date.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Davis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bass. The floor is open for discussion. Do we have any appointments?
The mayor.
Commissioner Kelly?
Since it's structured the way it is, usually for the audit committee, either the mayor or the vice mayor usually serves in that capacity. I know you're overwhelmed, so I move to recommend the vice mayor chair the audit committee. And that, well, I'll wait and hear my colleagues. I want to just give all the recommendations.
To your point, Commissioner Kelly, I do want to appoint myself as a part of the committee. So I definitely want to make sure that I am a part of the audit. As you know, financial is our #1 challenge and one of our 4 major challenges. And I'm dedicated to ensuring that our finances are audited and resolved, and I've been trying to make sure that this is pushed quite hard. So I want to make sure that continue that effort. So I would like to appoint myself to the committee, and that is my recommendation for myself. So anyone else?
Mayor Paget,
Commissioner Bass?
just clarity on the number and the number of appointees.
All right. So as it states right now, there is 3 slot, well, basically five available appointments. The city manager has to serve as an advisory capacity, and there's an alternate. So 1 member needs to be a city commission at least. However, there can be multiple people on a commission as a part of this. So at least 1 member needs to be on a committee, and we go from there.
And the other 2 can be a resident, correct?
Madam Attorney, you want to answer that question?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Commissioner Bass, through the mayor, there are 5 people that you all voted would be part of the audit committee on the last agenda that you had, and pursuant to Florida statutes 218.39, the issue that you have here is because you have 5 people, you need to appoint really all 5, because you could have, and in this case, you can have your city manager, which you probably want to have, or you could have the chief financial officer, either or any other staff person. However, that person would only serve in an advisory capacity. And then you would have 1 member of the governing board, your city commission, who would serve automatically per statute as the chair automatically. And you all have to pick that person. You have to confirm the city manager. You need to pick 3 other people, and you can pick it. It can be a citizen. It can be anyone you want. I think I may have mentioned in a previous meeting that what a lot of cities do is they may have a nearby budget director of a nearby city or something like that, to someone who knows what to look for in an audit and can help guide you through that process. So although you may want to have residents, you should also think about a technical person that can help you select someone who is qualified, or persons who are qualified. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Paget?
Yes, you still have the floor.
Okay, no, thank you. So my suggestion would be that we go ahead and choose the ones that are readily here, and then we can move forward. And I do have a resident who is a 8-year teacher, Dr. Robert B. Ingram Elementary, with experience in law. Let me just, if it's okay, can I just read a little of it?
Population of.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, teacher at Dr. Robert B. Ingram Elementary School for 8 years. She has a BA in political science, a minor in communications. She also attended Chaplain, and she's also a part of our relations board in the city of Opa-Locka. So just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Could you state her name for the record?
Sure. Makisha Finn.
All right, Makisha Finn.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Do we have any other appointments?
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly?
So if I heard the attorney correctly, it could be resident, it could be anyone, obviously someone with some experience, et cetera. And hearing you say as you wanted to be involved, which I didn't know if you had the time, I'll go back and recommend you as the chair for the audit committee, because usually it is the mayor if they have the time, or the vice mayor. That's why I stated it that way. So I would suggest that for you to be the chair. I don't have a problem with Finn. I also want to put Dottie Johnson's name in there, longtime resident, as a consideration as well. Thank you.
Any other appointments? All right, so we still need to select at least one other person. So we currently have on the item myself, Mayor Matthew Pygott as chair, Lakeisha Finn, and Dorothy Johnson. We still need to identify whether or not we want our city manager as the advisory member, and we need one other alternate member. So if anyone has any other recommendations for an alternate member and any considerations for staff?
Mayor Pygott?
Commissioner Bass.
Thank you. I will really like to see our city manager being a part of this board. Thank you.
All right.
Mayor Paget.
Commissioner Burke.
I think also Mr. Robert and we're still looking for staff.
Matter of fact, Commissioner, if you allow me to ask a question to the attorney.
Okay.
Madam Attorney, is there more than one staff member can be on this board? Madam Attorney? The question is whether or not—
I'm sorry about that. I was trying to unmute myself. I'm using my phone for the first time. Mayor, you can't have a staff as a voting member. You can only have a staff person as in an advisory capacity. And that staff person in this case would be the manager or the chief financial officer or a city staff person, but that person would not be a voting member. It would only be in an advisory capacity, and that would be the only person that you would have on there as a staff person. The statute provides, I think I mentioned, for 3 people for a municipality, but in this case, the city decided that it wanted to have 5 people, and so that's what you had in your last resolution that established an audit committee. And because you have 5 people, one of them has to be a city commissioner, one of them has to be a staff person in an advisory committee, and then the other 3 can be people that whoever you choose.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Burke still has the floor. I just
I'm
wanted
sorry.
clarity.
Go ahead. I yield to Commissioner Kelly.
Okay.
Thank you. I just had a quick question on the same line. So in determining that, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, you couldn't have more than 2 out of staff. I got that. But does that statute provision hold true for mayor versus another commissioner or vice mayor, or it only allows for 1 elected person?
Through the mayor, it does not specifically specify that. And so because it doesn't specifically specify, I would think you may be able to have another person because the statute it doesn't speak of that. It just says that the one, I would think that you probably want to be on the safe side by having only 1 member of the governing board who would be the chair. And I'll take a look at that to see whether it says 1 member. But it would be in my notes here for the statute, it's 1 member of the governing board who would serve as the chair. So let me look up the statute very quickly, but because it doesn't state that, and I think that we want to make sure we do it right, I would suggest that you allow that 1 member to serve only.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, while she's, I guess, trying to clarify, if that's the case, then you're going to serve the chair. The manager is going to either be there or appoint someone from the staff. We got 2 citizen recommendations. I don't know if you got to insert that last name. I would really, if we don't have to insert the last name, it could just do at least those 4, which at least establish it and gets it off the ground. Is it possible through the vice mayor, since he's on the lead, or someone, we can get someone from the league or someone with some financial experience that would be a totally outside person? I reached out to some folks, but I didn't get their confirmation they was available, so I don't want to mention their name. But is that possible to do, Madam Attorney? If we do establish these 4, at least we've established a committee, and maybe we can fill that 5th spot or that other spot with a person with some finance that's not a part of the city at all, which would be a set of outside eyes that would give it more balance. Is that doable, Mr. Mayor, to the attorney?
Madam Attorney. And I believe at the very least, the attorney did state that normally a local neighboring city's budget person or someone with financial expertise is appointed. So I believe what you're saying, Commissioner Kelly, can move forward. If the attorney has anything, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that is the case, Commissioner Kelly. We can appoint someone from a surrounding area. Now, whether or not we can move this forward without the alternate person, that is a question I want to make sure is addressed, Madam Attorney.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, I do have the statute in front of me, and what it says specifically is that one member shall serve, one member must serve as from the governing body. And so if it's a municipality, it just has to be that one member must, a minimum, auditor selection committee for a municipality consists of at least 3 members. 1 member of the auditor selection committee must be a member of the governing board. So it does not limit it to 1 member. It just says 1 member must be. But the statute is not, it does not speak to, that's the only member that can be. So it looks here that the statute just doesn't address that, which would allow for you to have an additional member from the city commission if you wanted to. There are going to be sunshine meetings anyway.
Well, Mr. Mayor, to my colleagues, I would just offer as the motion to fill in yourself as the chair, Ms. I think it's Finn, Ms. Johnson, obviously the manager or his designee, and that if it could be worded as such, a finance or whatever person from the neighboring city, I don't know if we can word it that way, but I don't know if she answered your question, Mr. Mayor. Can we move forward while that occurs? I didn't hear her answer that part of it.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Madam Attorney.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly, I believe that if that's what you all specify, you could have that to be the case, giving the city manager the authority to appoint that person, a budget or finance, a person with a budget or finance background from a neighboring municipality to be selected by the city manager. You could do that.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to specify neighboring city? Can we be specific?
You can say anything. You can say anything you want to. You could. You don't have to be that specific. No, sir. I thought that's what you were saying you wanted to see, but no, you don't have to be that specific.
Neighboring city would be good. I don't necessarily have to tie the manager's hands, but Mr. Mayor, my motion or my recommendation inserted would be yourself as the chair, Ms. Finn, Ms. Johnson, the manager, or his designee, and a finance person designated by the manager from a neighboring city. That would be what I would offer. And Mr. Mayor, your screen must be stuck because you're not moving. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, I hear you.
Hello? Oh,
I-
okay.
So with that, I would like to take that a little separately. First, I agree with the actual motion. Well, matter of fact, there's a motion on the floor. So the motion on the floor is to appoint Mayor Matthew Pygott as chair, the Keisha Finn, and also Ms. Dorothy Johnson as members of the city commission, all as members of the audit committee, along with the city manager or his designee as an advisory capacity, and also alternative member being appointed as suggested by the city manager from a neighboring city. Do I have a second on that?
Move it.
Moved by a second by Commissioner Burt. Floor is open for discussion. Any discussion on that item? Commissioner Kelly, I would want to know if we can amend your last alternate to just say someone with financial or audit experience, and not limited to neighboring cities, because we are surrounded by 3 cities, which will limit the number of people. And if all 3, like yourself, I reached out to quite a few individuals. And as of right now, due to the timing of it, I haven't gotten a firm commitment, and also didn't want to, I guess, proffer myself and also someone else. So with that, I would see if we can just take out the neighboring city language and ensure that it's someone with financial or auditing experience.
This is still someone that the manager would be appointing and or appointing?
Yes,
That's
sir.
still your screen is freezing, so I don't know if I can't really tell if you're.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, you gotta talk because your screen not moving. I couldn't. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that. I just said neighboring cities because, it might be familiar a little bit more with our situation, but I did say financial background, whoever it may be. I don't have a problem. The manager would know best who that should be anyway with the expertise. So I have a problem with that amendment. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment, and we can move forward.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Madam Attorney.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-Locka, Florida, amending Ordinance 15-31, Article 10, sign regulation of the land development regulations by retroactively extending the deadline for all non-conforming signage to become fully compliant until December 31st, 2020, providing for repealer, severability, codification, and an effective date. And this is sponsored by the city manager.
This is a public hearing item. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Davis. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes first reading.
All right, thank you very much. We have concluded our action items. Mr. Manager, it is time for your report.
Wow, you guys are moving too quickly through these items now. You usually give me another hour and a half and I'll be prepared, but I have something. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Madam Attorney, Madam Clerk, and staff. As always, it's always a pleasure to provide a report to the Commission and staff. We went and had a successful weekend this weekend, in my opinion, when we did the mask caravan throughout the city. We gave thousands of masks out. I'm not going to take the mayor's thunder. I just want to kind of say that and how moved I was by the process of what we did and how many people we actually served out in the community. And while it was raining, and by the way, so you know, it really was a great experience of stewardship and giving back to the community, which I hope we'll be able to do a more grassroots method and do this again soon. As far as coronavirus goes, we are still have an active testing station in Opa-Locka at Shabundi. The testing period has no expiration date at this point. They're still pushing and advising to get more people tested. So we average about 550 people per day. The highest day we've had is over 600. So I suggest and advise residents to dial 311, or they could be a walk-in, no appointment. Just as a caveat, if you do walk up and do not have an appointment, you will be waiting in the line for 3 or 4 hours, but you will get tested. I have not seen anybody be turned away from being testing that gets in the line at least before 1 o'clock. And then I think at that point, they cut the lines down. So the staff will be done testing by 4 or 5 o'clock. So that's very important. We're making a lot of strides as far as getting through this coronavirus pandemic. It's been very stressful for everybody, including myself and my staff. We have found new innovative ways to work and engage with one another, as well as continue to have the city business moving forward, which I think, in my opinion, is a very, very positive thing. Mr. Mayor, I know I typically talk about your 4 priorities during my report, but I know tomorrow I have a strategic planning session that staff will be briefing on those priorities. Do you still want to brief priorities today and tomorrow, or would you prefer just do it tomorrow?
All right, I wouldn't call them my 4 priorities. Those are 4 major challenges of the city that we face, and I want to make sure that we address them consistently. If you believe that you will be addressing them tomorrow during a workshop, I think that is fine. The public can go through. I want to make sure that we are very clearly aware of our challenges that we face as a city in order for us to move forward, and that the residents and the public are giving updates on how we're tackling those challenges head on.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I defer that part of my report to tomorrow, but I do have a couple more items I want to speak on. Our amnesty program, we need to figure out a way to kind of promote that program a little bit more. We do have applications on hand. We've had at least 7 applications come in. I've reviewed about 3 of them after all the required documentation has been submitted. And I've approved at this point 2 of them to a reduction where the city is still making a substantial amount of money, and we are clearing liens off that property, so those properties can be sold and placed back on the rolls, kind of moving forward. I've spoke to our PR and marketing consultant. We need to figure out as a group how to put that information out in layman's terms and not such technical terms, because we have a lot of residents out that can benefit from this program. And everybody that's coming to the city at this point are either people that own a lot of houses in the city, or people that are business owners that are trying to get some type of tax relief related to any violations and liens that are going on. As far as the assessment of the code enforcement department, I requested documentation from code enforcement on last week, as well as on Monday with the deadline. That deadline was missed. I had a conversation with the code enforcement department and the building official in regards to deadline being missed. And we're working on hopefully getting all the files I have requested by tomorrow close of business. So once that's done, I have a specific methodology that I already have in place in various areas of the applications, both dismissed tickets and voided tickets that I'm going to look over. I am going to notate those, break them out into a report, and provide recommendations to the City Commission in regards to how to move forward and rectifying issues as they may come about in regards to code enforcement and buildings and licensing. The police department, we're still reviewing the potential plan of action that was submitted in response to Miami-Dade County's police assessment of the Opa-Locka Police Department. Reviewing those notes, and I'm very much engaged with the police department and their progress and what they're doing kind of moving forward. I'm providing the commission some type of formal dialogue in the next couple of weeks in regards to that. The next department that I'm going to be looking at and reviewing is going to be the community development and the CRA, just to go over basic policies and procedures and various other items that that specific department is responsible for. I think that will give me opportunity to kind of look at some of the issues that were spoken of tonight in the CRA meeting, as well as what I observed in other CRA meetings and other commission meetings in general. My job is to assist departments to become more efficient and effective for our residents and for our commission. And that is my end goal, is to assist. That means additional personnel being requested, budgetary adjustments for more resources, or anything of that such. I will be looking into that and will be advising the City Commission appropriately. We are getting a lot of rain. I did receive correspondence from Senator Rubio's office today in regards to the L'Oreal Gardens departments. I want to make sure I'm right. Yes, that's correct. That communication is in regards to residents complaining about same situation when heavy rains, they're being flooded out their apartments and various different things like that. We all have observed it. The last large rain, I know myself, the mayor, and several members of our staff did go out there to kind of observe the conditions themselves so they can really truly understand what the people are going through in that area. I have put out direction as of last week to gather costs, how much it would cost to dredge their retention pond, as well as put other precautions in place to stop the flooding in that area. The question that is out there is the city does have the discretionary funds to do so from our disaster funds. But the question is, and I know I asked staff to reach out to the city attorney, and is if the city does take part and dredge their areas and make the appropriate adjustments, will the city be able to file any type of legal action to recoup those monies from the owners of the property? And that's the big question that's out there. So I know I had staff, I requested that staff reach out to the city attorney's office to ask that question and see if there's anything legally we can do, because we can do it. I just know based on my experience and me being here the year I've been here and a little bit of issues that we've dealt with in regards to properties and not belonging to the city and us stepping in and rectifying the matter, I know there may be some angst amongst the staff and maybe some members of the commission in regards to using city funds, the taxpayers' funds, to resolve somebody else's issue and not getting repaid those funds. And at the end of the day, as a city manager, I am ultimately responsible for the health, welfare, and safety of all that commute to and through Opa-Locka. So it's a little bit easier for me to make those fiscal determinations, but I want to kind of avoid any type of potential blowback that may occur by me making a call such as that. So I am seeing if we can file something in court and get the work done and just either lien the property or do something to attempt to recoup our funds. At this point, if there's no questions, that ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Do we have any questions for the manager?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Burke?
I've asked this question before and I'll ask it again. Why would the citizens of Opa-Locka, even though I know Glorietta Apartments is in the city of Opa-Locka, why would the taxpayers be spending money on somebody's properties that's making millions of dollars? Okay, there must be some way that the city can force or make the homeowners alleviate this problem without putting a further burden on the taxpayers of Opa-Locka. I mean, it's bad enough already that everybody is getting fat off of Opa-Locka. Now we want to start. I mean, I sympathize with the people at Glorietta Apartments, but them people, the owners of that property is making millions of dollars. You're gonna tell me our building official or our public works official or our attorney can't find a way to make them do that? That the city of Opa-Locka taxpayers have to weigh that cost and then wait to see if they're gonna pay us back? That shouldn't even be considered. We should have something that we could make that property owner do what they need to do. Don't put that on the backs of the taxpayers of the city of Opa-Locka. Our millage rate is going out the roof, and now you're going to spend our taxes to go into this private property to spend our tax dollars. Put our legal department, our building department, our public works department, do whatever we need to do. But don't put that burden on the taxpayers when the people over there raking in millions of dollars every month. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Vice Mayor Davis.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Burke. As you know, Glorietta Gardens has been a long-standing problem in this community that we've been, working, tirelessly to get our hand around and find some sort of resolution. But I couldn't agree with Commissioner, anymore. We shouldn't be subsidizing slum lords ultimately in our city. I'm gonna just call it what it is because the owner's a slumlord, period. I know we had previous discussions about special assessments and just looking at ways to ensure that everybody is paying their fair share. Of course, we miss probably many of the infrastructure improvements that should have been put in place when the apartments was first developed. So now here we are later, years later, trying to rectify the problem. Mr. Manager, you alluded to, I guess, liens or, some sort of code enforcement or looking at measures through our code to hold property owners like the ones in Glorietta Gardens accountable. I would be more in favor of those sort of options as opposed to, fronting some money, to kind of, I guess, speed up a remedy to a problem, but then we kind of lose on the back end because we're stuck trying to recoup our tax dollars through some sort of legal process. I, for one, wouldn't be in favor, of going that route. These properties have been, they've gotten money from the Florida allowance, those different coalitions and various tax credits. So, they had money to fix and renovate that property several times, which they, have failed to do. So like Commissioner Burke said, I doubt, if they had the money and they had the finances to make the improvements and ultimately, they weren't made, I for one wouldn't, be in favor of putting tax dollars in lieu of that to, even though it would help our residents and probably speed up the process, Mr. Manager.
Any other questions for the manager? Mr. Manager, your mic is up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Manager, you have to log off and log back on. I guess. Commissioner Kelly, you want to go or you want to come back?
I'll wait for the manager.
All right. All right, are you manager? Can you do a mic check?
I'm up and running.
All right, Commissioner Kelly.
Oh, okay, I thought you were speaking. I agree along the same lines with my colleagues. I did not hear you, Mr. Manager, specifically. You said you had correspondence from Senator Rubio. Exactly what was the correspondence and what did they plan to do or how they want to address this issue? Mr. Mayor.
Through the mayor.
Mr. Manager.
So the correspondence is what it always says. There's issues at the property. Residents and tenants have made us aware. What are you as a city doing with the property? Let us know if you need assistance. We send a response email stating that we're in a flood emergency. This is our declaration. This is how much it's going to cost to get it done. We hear crickets, no response. Another rain happens and we get the same email. It's like a repetitive function. So we get, every time it rains, we get an email from Senator Rubio's office with the same question, and we respond with the same response, and then you don't hear anything until it rains again.
Okay, Mayor, yeah, that sounds the same letter I've been hearing for about the last 10 years or so, just changed the date. I'm definitely not in favor of spending tax dollars. I do sympathize and empathize with the challenges, but those folks have made money for years. I guess the question would be is what the Vice Mayor asked, and I guess what you've asked as well regarding, well, your part was could you do it, which I don't think is prudent, but from a legal enforcement standpoint to make them comply or get them to do something, I guess that's something the attorney can let us know about or weigh in on with her thoughts. Let me move on to a couple of things. You mentioned the amnesty program is up and running. How is that functioning? You got is there an application? Is there, how are we getting that word out to folks? I heard you say you already got people in the process.
So Commissioner, ironically, the city has this pre-designated list of people that have always been trying to get some type of relief on their liens and on debts that they have. So the first groups of individuals that were contacted was those groups, which we had several, tens of people on those lists in regards to when the lien amnesty program is going to come about and sending information. The second part of it is getting our PR person to put something out that's something that's we're able to reach all segments of the community, because the program is so technical. We want to be able to put it out there where anybody can read it, grasp it, know what it is, and not have a lot of questions on it. I know we've been working on that since the past week. The program was extended to December, at the end of December, and we potentially can extend the program longer than that. So we are dealing with those caveats, Commissioner, as far as how to put it out there and how to kind of really communicate it.
So we okay, since you've got people already, there seems to be a lot of work. We hire someone else? I mean, is that coming through your office? How are we addressing that from a staff perspective? It seems like it's a lot. How are we dealing with that?
So as far as a staff perspective, we pulled one individual out of code enforcement and placed them under the office of the city manager during the amnesty period, because that job requires somebody to have knowledge of code enforcement and liens and various different things like that. So what they do is they do the technical research, pull the liens, pull the tickets, pull the citations. They do a staff analysis, which is provided to myself with a recommendation based on the amnesty program. I review everything, look at the totality of circumstances, speak to the applicant, and then make a determination of what percentage we take off of those liens. And then that's also based on the assessed value of the home as well. If they have a appraisal done on whatever property that's in question, I believe within a 1 year, 66-month period, I don't have it in front of me. So there's a lot of hoops that have to be crossed. And so I pulled somebody from the code enforcement department to work on that program at least until December.
So that means we pull back code enforcement, that means we really got to get less code officers.
Mr. Kelly,
Yeah,
your mic is
it's not muted, so maybe you can hear me.
your mic is messed up. Log off.
Okay, I'll log off, I'll come back.
Mr. Mayor,
You can go, but do you want to wait for Commissioner Kelly to come back?
I just need to speak to the city manager for a minute. Can I through the
Yes, you have the floor.
manager? I need to schedule a meeting with you as soon as possible, whether it's Zoom, at the office or on the telephone. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, while we wait on Commissioner Kelly.
Mayor Davis.
Thank you. I guess through the mayor to the manager, the amnesty program. It's a temporary program that's slated to end in December.
That's correct.
Correctly? Okay. And what happens after that point? The program is non-existent, or?
And typically, most municipalities renew it every year. It typically is a program that opens and shuts once a year, once every other year, based on the volume of liens and citations. And you look at the collection rate and make a determination if you want to have it be a multi-year program or how long you want that program to last.
Okay, great. So like almost on an as needed basis, kind of like if you need the program, or if you don't, you kind of go.
Correct.
With it.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know, maybe my question I haven't answered. So we pull one person code enforcement who's overseeing this program. My question was, and you're running this all the way to December and possibly on, but at least until December because of the volume and interest, and you already had a waiting list. So we're actually one short on code enforcement now in terms of officers.
Correct.
Okay. You don't see that position because of its volume or whatever, since you had a waiting list, as being one that could be self-sufficient and pay for itself?
I do see the position to be self-sufficient and pay for itself over time. I just want to see how much money we bring in during this first group that we're doing since I'm here. But the potential settlement amounts that I'm looking at, 50,000, 75,000, 80,000. If we keep getting numbers like that, even 25,000 as a proposed settlement, yes, it should be able to fund itself.
Okay, I'm saying that because I still see a lot of trash piles and code issues that need to be dealt with. So we're pulling someone from an already, in my opinion, understaffed department. That's just going to compound it. But I guess temporarily, you'll see how it works out and go from there. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Mr. Manager, is there's still a lot of flooding. There's still a lot of flooding all over the city, and I know we're aiming to do a major scale flooding, drainage, something at some point. And I want to put this out because I've gotten it from several business owners as well as residents. If we're going to find dollars at this moment to fund smaller things, we need to always consider the flooding challenges and or pothole street issues. I know we got the pothole patch or whatever we call it out there, but that's still out there in terms of residents' concerns that when we do come up with dollars, we're not really addressing those meat and potato issues, I call it like that affect residents every day. So I'm just gonna share that with you, and also going forward, just keep that in mind going forward. The other things I'll address with you later time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Just to point Commissioner Kelly and for the want us to make sure that here's some feedback. The flooding and potholes are part of our 4 major challenges that we face as a city. And over the course of the past almost about year, 2 years, we have made some significant progress on that. There's too much more to go. And this upcoming budget, we've allocated at least $1 million to address specifically stormwater management issues. We also invested in a storm back truck to start to clean out those gutters. And that's been mapping out to ensure that we address this flooding. And also earlier this year, we secured, we did an RFP to secure the services of quite a few civil engineers and others that can come in and do a complete assessment of the city and come up with a game plan for us to address this over the long haul. Those are the challenges that we've been addressing and facing. Also, we not only, as Commissioner Kelly mentioned, we've not only purchased a pothole patcher and we've remilled over 10 miles of streets in the past few years, the largest remilling and pothole reduction process in the history of the city of Opa-Locka. And that was also combined with the work of the county and making sure that all the county roads were also repaved in the city. So there's been a huge amount. Please, I know it's been long overdue, but we are government and we are in a financial crisis, and our ability to address these major infrastructure projects that took decades to come together will take some time to address. But please rest assured that we are moving on that, and it's part of those 4 major challenges that we are tackling head on. I do want to touch on a piece that I was sitting here as some of you were talking about Glorietta Apartments, a little on the edge of my seat and also a little dismayed because of the conditions that there are over 100 families in our city of Opa-Locka are experiencing slum conditions. And as someone that had personal experience with those living conditions, it is very, very, very difficult to live in those conditions day after day. And for us to focus on a property owner who does not live there and whose money does not go towards those residents, our founders, those who wrote the charter of the city of Opa-Locka, put within our charter that the powers of this commission in section 2.5-10 stated that we will have the right. As a matter of fact, let me pull it up. That it is within our powers to provide for safe and sanitary housing accommodations for families of low income. In the next section, in the next number 11, it says that we can adopt, modify, and carry out plans proposed for the clearance of slum districts and rehabilitation of blighted areas. This is our charge to protect our residents from those type of property owners. And who else do they have to turn to? As stated, they can't turn to the senator, the state to do it. It is on us as a city to do that. And we need to put pressure to make sure that it gets done. And if it doesn't get done, I am in full support of us doing what we need to do to ensure that our residents, and no resident within the city of Opa-Locka lives in those conditions. But I agree wholeheartedly with the sentiments of my colleagues to ensure that the property owner pays for that. But living day to day, having water and mold in your house with your kids is a very, very tough situation. And when you have no other hope it is on us as a city and as a commission to step in for those residents. So my question, Mr. Manager, for your report, have we exhausted the full extent of our powers as a code enforcement to lien and those properties, whether it be running fines, maximum fines, have we done that yet? You're on mute, Mr. Manager.
The answer is yes, and the property currently has over $400,000 of liens on it currently. If the commission remembers, back in January, they came before the commission to try to get those waived. So they already have several hundred thousands of dollars of fines and penalties, as well as running fines in regards to flooding. The last 2 flooding emergencies, I know code enforcement, based on what they told me, went out and issued citations in regards to the flood waters. The city personally, the last flood event, went out, toured the property, spoke to management, and they gave a whole bunch of hoopla and no solution. We just had another rain event recently. Again, we out there, same people. Now I hear the property manager resigned and she's leaving and transitioning somewhere else. So the city has done outreach. We've went out there. Since I've been here, we went out there, especially during these flood events, to no avail, to a point where I asked Mr. Austin to tell me how much it will cost to have the flooding and stop over there, what would be required to happen. And he provided those cost estimates together. I believe I put out correspondence, Mr. Austin, keep me honest here. Did I put out correspondence requesting if there is anything else we could do as far as getting them held accountable as far as a lien or even potential legal action? I asked staff to reach out to city attorney in regards to that. So I've even done that, and I will do follow up on my own request. And I will speak with the city attorney tomorrow in regards to that, to see what other options we have. But yes, we have. We've been out there and we have a plan in action. It's a shovel-ready plan. But again, just like I stated, I would need some type of consensus to support the commission, which I don't have. So so when these things happen, when these flood events happen, and the news is out there, and they're asking the city what they've been doing, I'm in a rock and a hard place, because we've done the enforcement, we've written the citations, we've been on the property on multiple occasions. We develop a plan to go out there, health, welfare, and safety of the resident, to go out there and dredge and do what we need to do to stop the flooding, to stop, these residents from being flooded out their apartments. But at this point, we're like I'm in a rock and a hard place right now at this moment.
So with that, Mr. Manager, and I know you asked for the attorney, have we had a clear, and Madam Attorney, if you can chime in on this, on our powers as a government to do that work and sue them, or what powers do we have in order to ensure, outside of code enforcement, that property owner does the work expeditiously, and if not, if we go in and do the work to make sure that we can recoup funds. Could you weigh in on that, Madam Attorney? Did the attorney leave?
Well, that's something that we can look into. I'm not aware of any detailed conversation that came to our department concerning that, but that's something that we can go ahead and look into.
Well, I will look forward to seeing that that report as soon as possible. I want to make sure that we exhaust all of our means. I do completely understand my colleagues and also many residents that feel as though that property owner should do what they need to do, and they need to pay for it. I'm in full support of that. But at the end of the day, as the manager just said, right now we're at a juncture where it is on us, and we have the power to relieve over 100 families within our city from living in slum conditions where their houses are being flooded and mold is being affected, and so many other things are taking place due to the lack of flooding. So I will continue to advocate and push as a representative to ensure that even the least of our population has the full support of the government to ensure they can live very well. So I look forward to seeing that report from the attorney and seeing what strategies we can exhaust. And I hope that once we get that, I will ask my colleagues and also the manager to bring that item to the commission so that we can debate whether or not we're going to make that decision to address that.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just clarify, if I may, you're asking for a report from the city attorney's office to do what in particular? I apologize.
So it is based upon our charter, the powers of the commission, section 2.5, 10 states that we are to provide for safety, sanitary housing accommodation for low-income families. Moreover, section 11 says that we can adopt, modify, and carry out plans propose the clearance of slum districts and rehabilitation of blighted areas. Glorietta Apartments fit those terms. And for decades, they've lived in slum conditions in a blighted area, and they are part of low-income Section 8 housing. And we have exhausted, as the city manager said, our code enforcement liens, and we want to know what is the next step in our legal power in order to enforce our charter responsibility and make the property owner, hopefully, pay. Do we have the power to go in there and sue them for having to do that emergency work? What can we do? Like that's
right. If it is an unsafe structure, obviously your building official can remedy that, and that can include shutting the property down. So those are things that your building official would be able to go inspect, get a handle on, and take the appropriate action. I think that we would like to certainly look into the code vis-a-vis how it can be applied, even in light of federal laws that may be existing that may supersede what may be in our charter. But having said that, certainly always the base minimum that you can do, and that is immediately, is if it is something that is considered an unsafe structure for reasons that do not meet the building code, that building official has the capacity to, if it is life safe, health, welfare, any of those kind of things, that building official can shut that property down. So, that just, I think that's the first channel. If it speaks to the issues that you all are talking about and it rises to that level, you always have that ability. You don't even have to rely upon, looking at what may be dated provisions of the charter.
So,
Mayor.
so with that, I got you, Commissioner Kelly. I know that one of the concerns that we have with that property is that it does provide for over 100 families, and there is a dearth of affordable housing. So I know that's one reason why I've heard that hasn't moved forward. So I'm curious about the manager's proposal of doing the work and suing them, and whether or not we have the power to recoup our funds with that. So that's what I really would like to definitely know in regards to that situation.
And are you, Mr. Mayor, and I won't belabor the issue, but are you looking at issues of maybe it being a nuisance, and is that the direction that you're going in as to whether it is considered a nuisance property? Is that something that I didn't know if that, okay. You look puzzled, so never mind. Okay,
But that's what I would like us to be able to have that conversation.
okay,
Like,
okay.
what can we do? And I think that's what all of us want to make sure happens, is that what can we do to ensure that that property owner does what they have to do, and make sure that we've exhausted all of that before we come to the decision of whether or not we're going to use our taxpayer dollars to do what we have to do. And I would like to know all the things that we have first before we have to make that decision. Yeah, before we have to make that decision. So that's where I am with that. Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to the attorney's findings. That property, along with, I still call it the new apartments, 13875, both of those have the same kind of challenges. And to my history and to my recollection, going on private property has always been a major challenge, just like doing the work on State Road 9. It's private property, it belongs to the county, belongs to this one, so you can't touch it. And I know from my history, the city in the past has wanted to go and deal with the property, do drainage, do some temporary stuff, and it's always been rebuffed. Maybe that's changed, so I'll wait on an attorney to look at that. Ultimately, Mr. Mayor, to my colleagues, as you mentioned, the ultimate power, as the attorney mentioned, is to close it down, which is something none of us want to see unless we have housing for those folks. And quite honestly, I think that's what ownership holds over us, because they know we do not want to see 100 families displaced, but at the same time, we don't want to see them living in those conditions. So absent the attorney finding something really concrete, because I'm really concerned if we spend the money, number one, creating more headaches for ourselves, and number two, not being able to recoup our dollars. But I would hope maybe you didn't give a time frame, but I would hope maybe within the next week, maybe even a part of the next workshop next Thursday or whatever, because it is a pressing issue with flooding. It's not gonna get better. But I've seen other cities and other situations, and the ultimate weapon, and I can tell you from experience, if you shut it down, a code goes in there, the building official deems it unsafe, we had better have some place for 100 families to go, or they will be sitting in front of your yard and my yard and all of I'm telling you from history and from experience, when you close it down, the first thing they're gonna say is the city shut it down. It wasn't the owners, it wasn't whatever. Where are we gonna stay? And although the Red Cross may do that 3-day thing, they'll be, when you wake up and I wake up, Vice Mayor and Commissioner Burke, they'll be in front of our house saying, okay, what I'm supposed to do now? I'm supposed to feed my family. So I recognize the challenge. I think all of us on the same page. I would just hope, Mr. Mayor, directed me to have something really concrete for our workshop next Thursday, so the commission can kind of make a decision, as you said, which way or what we want to do, and the manager will have the numbers on what it would cost to make some kind of resolution, and not only for that property, but also for 13875, because you have some of the same kinds of challenges with management. So I just shared that along the same lines, and hopefully that can be the not deadline, but hopefully you'll have the information by that next workshop next week. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor Paget.
All right, Commissioner Bass, and then Mr. Manager.
Thank you. I sat back and I'm listening to everything. My take on it is I have many kids that I'm in contact with on a daily basis while I'm at work because of asthma, because of other sicknesses or whatever have you that happens to them because of where they live. My take on it is a life is worth more than $1. I think we need to do whatever it is necessary we need to do to help our residents because they are our people. If it was my family members, I would want them to be taken care of. And furthermore, maybe we need to help to educate the residents on knowing that they really don't have to pay the rent to the office. They can create an escrow account at the courthouse, pay the money downtown at the courthouse, and that's the big bite. The owners won't see that money until it's fixed. So maybe if we can get some help to educate them on creating that escrow account and have all of them to make their payments, their monthly payments to the escrow account, maybe that will shape the owners into, looking into rectifying whatever. And as it relates to closing the complex, I'm not in agreement with that, but I also thought that maybe if they're given like maybe a year and a half or 2 years and say if it's not done by then, we're not going to renew permits or whatever the case may be. So that's my take on it. But I know that there's a lot of safety issues back there. And we as elected officials, those people voted us in and we need to take care of them. Right now it's not about, I know there's the deficits with the dollar, the dollar and the city not having enough money, the whole 9 yards, whatever the case is. But however, those are lives of people. Those are people's lives that we're dealing with. And it's our business to make sure that we do our part to make sure that they're taken care of. And at the tail end of it, however it works out, it works out. But people lives above a dollar. Thank you.
Mayor Paget.
Mr. Manager, Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke. Yeah, I want to go first.
Mayor Paget.
Go ahead, Commissioner Burke.
If I understand, the city manager said we've exhausted everything that we within our powers. And then if I'm not mistaken, I think he said we had like $400,000 worth of liens on the property.
Yeah, this is the same. This Millennium Group, same group that came to the commission back in January, requesting us to waive. Different company.
That is a different company.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, if we have that, do we know? I know there's liens on that property. But have we thought about foreclosing on, threatening to foreclose on the liens? Have we looked into that? Because if just the process of starting to foreclose on the liens, I think I'll bring them to the table. And like I say, I understand that we had an apartment building in Opa-Locka, Aswan Villas. And I know what Commissioner Kelly was talking about. That had over 100 families in it when they shut it down. And it wasn't a pretty sight. We don't have the money to put these people up no place. We don't have no money to house these people. So that's the last thing we want to do is shut it down. But I'm sure there have to be some legal recourse that we can take, even as far as foreclosing on the liens. But there have to be some recourse that we can take rather than taking the homeowners, the taxpayers' money to spend on millionaires' properties. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Manager.
This is actually off topic. So can you check and see if everybody's like done with this topic? I have to piggyback on something.
All right. So I just want to be clear. If there are no other comments, I think the commission is very clear. Mr. Manager, Madam Attorney, please tell us all the options on the table, whether it be foreclosure, whether it be doing the work and getting recouped, whatever we have to do, running fine on the property, Whatever it is, we look forward to seeing what that looks like next week, Thursday, at our workshop. All right, Mr. Manager.
My apologies. I wanted to have a discussion on the budget. Robert, are you available? We did some number analysis that the commission requested last week in regards to two things. The first thing is bringing everybody up to a living wage of $30,000 and alternative projects for the Parks and Recreation Department and facilities. Myself and staff did conduct that analysis on Monday and Tuesday of this week. So I kind of slipped my mind since it passed through the consent agenda. But I do want to bring those options up. I do want to get some feedback from the commission because this means we may have to alter the budget document before it goes to Tallahassee for their review. So we do want to kind of get your input on it. Robert? Mr. Anathan? Okay. Here he looks like he's coming in.
No, I'm right here. I'm sorry. I'm on the road. I thought we were into reports. I'm sorry. I heard the comments. I'm not quite sure what you would like me to comment on.
I want you to go over the assessment we did in regards to park facilities, huts, different things we looked at in regards to that, and bringing everybody up to a $30,000 living wage, what that assessment looks like, so the commission can provide some type of guidance moving forward.
Yeah, all of the analysis was carried out in the report that was sent to you and in turn was sent to the commission. So they should have that with one exception. In the meeting that was held on Monday related to the prep work for the summit, the park summit, it was identified that the football program had been terminated, which I didn't know, which provided another $20,000. And also what came out of that meeting on Monday was the maintenance of the park grounds suddenly became.
I think we lost you. Are you still there, Mr. Anathan?
Robert?
All right, Mr. Manager, if I have this document up, are you referring to the memorandum that was submitted from Mr. Anathan to you?
Yes, that's correct.
Commission?
That's correct.
And if I am looking at this correctly, it looks like there were 5 projects that were proposed that, to allocate a total of $265,000, 150 for Parks Master Plan, 30,000 for a senior center, 65,000 for Kaboom Park, 20,000 for Ingram Park, and 60,000 for Shabundi Village. And that the proposal was to allocate, I think, 150 for in this year's budget for the parks, which will be mitigated, I think, half by the CRA, and the rest would be out of basically reorganization of the funds in parks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So I think that's what's on the table. I think let's take care of that, and then we can go into the living wage conversation. How does the commission feel about moving on those with that recommendation?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
thank you. I'm really taken aback, and Mr. Manager, I'm really disappointed. I really want to say that to the highest level, and I respect you highly, but I've been talking about parks, Ingram Park in particular, but parks in general, for 6, 7, 8 months since we reopened. Ingram last year temporarily, how we could find funding, how would funding come about to do some temporary stuff for the park. Always, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it. We had discussed about a park summit, which I had a meeting with the vice mayor on yesterday to talk about bringing forward to the commission some ideas to put together a park summit, only to receive these documents through email about funding all of a sudden being found, and then proposed funding for a park master plan, $150,000, partly coming from city funds and partly from CRA, which was even more interesting to me. Nobody wants to see parks and leisure services improve more than me. Nobody. But I feel very slighted to have all this happen in basically 2 days of finding funds and et cetera, and brought forth in such a time frame when I've been asking how we could even get some of the smaller things done on the park. There was no funding, there was no potential funding, and now we're moving dollars, we're shifting dollars, we're gonna not hire somebody, we're going to not field this. I haven't had a chance to even look at how you come to some of these numbers with 30,000, 20,000. And again, it's not that I am opposed to seeing park improvements, but I'm really challenged to how this is just taking on a life of its own that quick. I've been talking about, and I brought it up early this year when we were at Helen Miller, one of our many meetings that we used to have, and when we were meeting together about a park summit to look at what the future parks, leisure services, the diversity of our community. And I had mentioned to you as well about COVID-19. There's some other things that have come up, as the vice mayor mentioned yesterday, the maintenance and things that I see Mr. Anthem briefly mentioned. I'm not in favor of moving forward on spending any dollars right now in terms of that. I just don't have a clear enough grasp on how I even came to some of these numbers. I think we do have time. I think there will be a time for a park master plan, but I don't think the budget for that is right now. I think that we do need to do some temporary things. But I think all that is a part of really the summit that we really need to have as a commission. That's just my thoughts. Obviously, if the commission wants to move forward to spend the dollars now, they can. I would like to hear the presentation, if you will, on the living wage and the salary component and how you would do that. But in terms of the park piece right now, I'm really challenged at that whole process and how it came together. That's just my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. That's all I have on that.
Commissioner K, I'm actually a little confused. And number one, I would actually challenge your determination to be the main person fighting for parks, because that is definitely something very near to my heart. The only reason why I haven't pushed so hard is because we have major challenges that we face as a city in order to allocate the proper funds for it. But I know that, and Mr. Manager or Mr. Austin, I know there's been a significant investment on Ingram Park this year, and there's even a more significant investment budget for this coming year. And that this park plan will provide the funding necessary for the park summit that we as a city are hosting in August. So this allocation is a direct, from what I believe, is a direct a result of this commission wanting to ensure that we are proper stewards of taxpayers' dollars and allocating it. And I think we made that very clear last week during our budget, which is when we actually do that. And during our budget conversation, we saw that our parks, due to COVID and this pandemic, is an opportunity for us to reallocate funds that would normally be put towards programming. So that this analysis was sent to us on Monday. I think we asked for it either Wednesday or Thursday. Mr. Anathan sent it out, or Mr. Pate sent that out on Monday. And I know y'all had your conversation yesterday, you and Vice Mayor, to plan out the logistics. I think this is a great opportunity for us, so that we have the fun. Like whatever comes out of the Park Summit, at the very least, we will have 150,000 dedicated to making sure that is realized. I think it's a significant achievement. I think we need to make sure that happens. I'm excited about the Park Summit, and I want to make sure that we do have funds in the budget, that instead of just people talk a lot, but we have, this government has allocated funding to get Ingram Park back online and make sure it's online, and to ensure that all of our parks are focused, and we have leisure activities. So much respect for leading that effort, you and the Vice Mayor, to do the Park Summit. I do want to make sure the public is clear that this isn't out of nowhere. It's something we've been talking about. We want to make sure we allocate the money to get done. Yeah, we just get it done. So if there is any other conversation on the parks, let's go ahead and move to the living wage.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
may I?
Yes, sir.
The reason the plan was issued, it was a clear directive by the city commission to come up with a plan in regards to our facilities due to COVID-19 and for living wage. When me and my staff collectively sat down and spoke, ideas came from CRA, community development, budget. Everybody was in the room kicking the ball down each other down the road. How can we figure this out? Because this is a charge that the commission provided me as the manager to come up with a solution. So this is not something that just suddenly happened, and you know, I did not, if Commissioner Kelly feels slighted, it's not my intent to slight him or anybody else on the dais in regards to any request they made. CRA brought up the idea of a park master plan, and even said part of the CRA plan, part of it is encompassing of parks, and that the CRA didn't have a problem fronting money to assist us with that. So based on that statement coming, first time I knew about it now, based on that statement coming about on Monday, we restructured our plan and put something in writing and provided to the commission. This is not something that we've been hiding in a secret chest somewhere. And then we said, oh, ta-da, we're just gonna pop it out and give a surprise on Wednesday night. That's not how this all came about. And I just wanna make it clear, that's not how I work at all whatsoever. And that'll be complete my comments on that.
All right, let's move on to the living wage discussion. So if I'm reading this in the same memo correctly, it says that the ability to bring employees to at least $30,000 per annum will include a cost of $79,000, with 68 coming from the general fund. And if implemented, it will reduce what we're talking about in terms of parks. Yeah, I'm confused about the rest of it, but that's what I see right now. If you want to flesh that out, Mr. Manager or Mr. Anathan, to make it more clear, are you basically saying?
Manager, I'm back on board if you want me to answer that.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I'm sorry. Well, I don't know what happened. I got cut off mid-sentence. What that piece of work says is, again, based on what the manager mentioned a moment ago, we took as our marching orders last Thursday night to come up with a alternate proposal that would allow the parks to move forward. Where the funding came from is essentially every one of the recommendations for the source of funding was taking out of the budget something that was new this year, or I'm sorry, new next year. So we backed that out. It's not as though it's not as though we took existing programs and stripped them down. These were going to be new things we were going to do, and that's how we chose to fund it. The total funding had to cover both the recommendations that we offered up in terms of park improvements, but also that was deemed to be a source of funding for, as you mentioned, the 79,000, 68,000, which was going to come out of the general fund. So it was one set of savings, recognizing that it had to serve two purposes, one of which is to provide you with a series of options that we thought things that you may want to consider doing with the parks. And then secondarily, also provide you the ability to fund the a policy that gets everybody up to $30,000 wages without having to go into the contingency that was set up for the general fund. So hopefully that makes things a little bit clearer.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Manager, do you need a motion or something, or can we even make a amend what we just approved through consent agenda to make this, or like what exactly are you looking for in terms of decision, and what's our ability to do to either yay or nay these proposals that staff came up with?
I would ask for guidance from legal, since this already came through the consent agenda and been passed. I don't know, a motion to reconsider needs to be done with an amendment. I don't know. Bernadette?
Ms. Weeks?
A motion to reconsider can be done at the same meeting if that's the will of the commission.
So what we'll need to do is to make a motion to reconsider item 13.3. And then in that discussion, we'll have to amend the budget and identify those changes. Is that what I'm hearing, Madam Attorney?
You could do that, yes, sir.
All right. Does anyone want to make a motion to reconsider 13.3 and discuss those recommendations about living wage and also this park funding?
And Mr. Mayor, before you go forward, it needs to be someone on the prevailing side of the motion.
We all voted.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
before you get into these motions, since you discussed this or brought it up and allowed Mr. Hampton to clarify, I still did not get a clarity on the living wage side of how he came up, how many employees this is, and exactly where the funding for the living wage portion would come from.
Mr. Anderson? Mr. Anderson?
Issues with his phone.
He stated 68,000 will come out of general fund. The remaining portion of the money, I will assume, will come out of water and sewer. I'm going to assume, but I'll wait for him to get back on.
I apologize. I'm back if I can contribute to the conversation. Yeah,
Okay.
If I may, Commissioner Kelly, through the chair or through the mayor. What I did is we have a database that lists every employee, full-time and part-time. And what I went through is identified each person who was making less than $30,000 a year, put in whatever increase it would take to get to 30,000, then lay on top of it the payroll taxes, the retirement benefits, and also whatever is that particular job description had in terms of a workers' comp code or a workers' comp charge. So by going through all, I think it probably was 130 full-time employees, it was just a question of identifying which folks were making less than the target amount, getting them up to that amount and then putting in the load of benefits on top of it. The funding, I guess I'm not making it clear, the funding that is proposed is part of all of the recommended savings that we proposed, at least in the letter, if not tonight. And that was, as I said, those savings were intended to both do park projects as well as, if the commission chose to go there, provide on the general fund side $68,000 to cover the increase in wages for the affected employees.
So we're taking money from the park to increase the wages to get those 30 employees to
No, sir.
30,000? I don't understand you. That's why I'm asking.
So through the mayor, there was a list of reductions we made. It had to do with police vehicles. It had to do with computers.
You're muted. You're muted.
Unmute your mic, Mr. Addington.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that happen to me. I was talking and it just dropped out, I guess. I'll start again because I'm not sure where I dropped out. Through the mayor, Commissioner Kelly, what we did is we, across the board, we took a look at the budget and we identified things that were going to be new next year, and we backed those out. Backed out training for employees, which was going to be new. We backed out new computers. We backed out cars, all things that were new next year. We said, okay, we'll just go. The commission wants to do 2 programs, one of which was the minimum wage, and the other one was a focus program on the parks and so forth. So across all units, and particularly, I should say, all general fund units, because that's where the money has to come from. We identify savings across the board, which could be used either for park projects, new park projects, or could be used for the funding source for those employees who are currently making less than $30,000 a year. So it was not taking money from the parks to fund the employees. It was to a certain extent because we identified an entire pot of savings for 2 different purposes. And if you chose not to provide the increase to the employees who are making less than $30,000, by definition, that money would then be available to apply against park projects if you wanted to go down that road.
So, so the change you made were internal, where you decreased funding in certain departments to come up with the funding to do these 2 things.
Correct. That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
So I heard you say police, I heard you say IT. Yep. So you said across the board, just various departments.
Yes, sir. We looked at things that were going to be new next year. And my rationale was we've got along with that now. We thought it was important enough to possibly improve those departments. But if there was a direction from the commission to really look about how you're going to fund a program to really accelerate the improvement of the parks. One of the pages I would have shown you tonight is the parks budget for next year. It was about $400,000 of people and about $100,000 of operating expense. There just wasn't enough in there to take some money from that and do something major in the way of parks. So we really had to go across the board to all departments within the general fund to find the money, which is what we did.
Well, that's what you did for the program for parks and for the wage.
Yes, exactly. It was the directions we got Thursday night were to, 1, do something to make the park program, make the park something that the residents would be proud of and would want to use. And 2, investigate what it takes to get the few employees who are making less than $30,000 up to a $30,000 level. So we identified savings across the board, and that money could be used for one or the other or both as the commission chooses.
Okay, thank you. You're using the term savings, but you're really taking it from various departments that they were looking for in their budget to accomplish these things right now. Okay, I got it. Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Anthem. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm clear.
All right, actually, let me see if we can do this, because I know that we have to submit a preliminary budget to State Oversight Board by August 1st. So we have until next week, Friday, to do that. And right now it seems as though we're unclear about exactly what programs or new initiatives are being cut for these two items. And I think it's important for us to know exactly what those are. Is it of the commission, instead of, I guess, reconsidering it or maybe reconsider it and then deferring it to a special commission meeting? If we want to do that for next week, Thursday, either right before or right after the workshop. And first I want to weigh in from staff to see whether or not that is to do that.
May I enter that conversation? Whatever you decide has got to go back through all the electronics to the budget book. I would hate to have to deliver something on Friday that was decided Thursday night. I'm good, but I'm not that good.
Got it. All right. So then that may be out, and since can't call a special commission meeting tomorrow because it is that time. Yeah, because it's less than 24 hours. If the commission really wants to see this happen, we want to push it for Friday. Or matter of fact, let me get this other question. Can we send the budget up as it is now with considerations that we may want to make these changes? Because it is a preliminary budget, which means we as a commission still have to approve this budget with the recommendations of the state. So if we send this document up there with this memo that we may plan to make these changes and they don't have anything to say, then at the next budget conversation where we're actually going to approve the budget, we can make those amendments. Is that possible?
May I? Typically, if you send the budget up to the state and they give remarks, they're giving remarks to cut.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to give you remarks to go up. So if you want something that's going to go up, I will send it now before it gets to do it now. If you send it down there, they're going to talk about making cuts, not doing increases. We already had a difficult challenge earlier in the year in regards to wages and rates and those conversations that I've had with the state. So if we're going to do it, we need to do it now and submit it with the first submittal to the state.
You say go up. We won't be going up in budget. We'll just be moving.
But they're looking at it, but they are looking at our prioritization. So if you're pulling from programs and various different things like that, and it goes up there, and then you say, well, we want to make changes and we want to take away from this program. Well, the state may say, well, we want you guys to have these programs or whatever line items that you're taking away from. You know, just like last year, they put everything in the reserves. Everything they didn't agree with, they put in the reserves.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to figure this out. It's getting late. This is, we've started to have more efficient meetings. And due to oversight, we weren't able to have the full conversation and presentation while our budget director was able to provide that information to us. So right now we're at the end of the hour and we want to consider what we as a commission decided that we wanted from management. We want to consider that. But at least one of my colleagues stated that they want to see flushing out what those considerations are. So if you provide us with either a clear understanding of what those considerations are now, or could you propose a time or ability where we can look at that and make a decision and move forward and put this to rest?
Mr. Mayor?
You have the floor, Mr. Manager.
I would like to poll what everybody's availability is on Tuesday evening. I say just call a special meeting on Tuesday evening. Then gives you guys the weekend to digest the information, get whatever thoughts or questions you guys have, and we can kind of flush this out. And then it'd be done on Tuesday. Right, then that gives Robert 3 or 4 days to make the changes, and we're kind of done with it. We can move on to other business.
Colleagues, thoughts?
Mr. Mayor,
And Commissioner Bass, you can, was that you? Oh, Commissioner Kelly, go ahead.
I'll defer to Commissioner Bass.
I was gonna say, I'll make myself available for Tuesday because I'm sure that we all want to see the increase in wages for our staff, but I don't know how comfortable I am, even though I appreciate the hard work that has been put into this, but I don't know how comfortable I am pulling from the police department and some other areas. You know, I'm just a little bit, so I will just reserve everything else until Tuesday. Thank you.
Commissioner Kelly?
Mr. Mayor, I agree. If we could do it Tuesday, because I don't want to pull and then find out later something we took from whatever is vital to that department. As much as I do love parks and obviously want to see the wages. So if we can get that breakdown of where it's coming from and the impact, if any, from those departments, I would have much of a comfort level. Because it stands now, I don't have one to pass it, those approvals right now. Thank you.
All right, I'm in favor of that, so that's the majority. If anyone else want to add in on that, Tuesday at 5:30. 5:30.
5:30 is fine.
Rest of my
5:30 works, Mayor.
Works for me, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So do we, Madam Attorney, do we need to make a motion to reconsider that item and then defer it, or do
Yes,
we
sir.
put an amendment to it on Tuesday?
Just as you stated initially.
All right. So do I have a motion to reconsider item, right, 13.3?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to reconsider item 13.3.
Second that motion.
Second by Vice Mayor Davis. Mr. Manager, would you defer that item to Tuesday? Special commission. Oh, I guess we can make a motion to defer this item do I have a motion to defer this item to a special commission meeting on Tuesday, July 28th at 5:30 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, just clarification, we do give approval for the reconsideration to put it on the table?
Oh, snap, you're right. I didn't do that. Any discussion on the motion to reconsider? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we would move 13.3 to a special meeting, defer it to a special meeting at 5:30 on Tuesday.
All right. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second for Tuesday, July 28th?
Second that motion.
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Davis. Any discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Bass,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. If there's not anything else for Mr. Manager and his report? All right. Anyone? There we go. All right. I think, okay. All right. Anyone have hopefully briefs reports?
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Yes, I'll be very, very brief. So under my report for this week, I have the saggy pants ordinance. I know Commissioner Bass sponsored legislation to, I guess, add an item to the agenda where we discuss future items that we're considering. I know we had some discussion about it briefly as we talked about other laws coming on our books and how we kind of had laws that we weren't enforcing and just the challenges that are associated with enforcing laws and how they could be enforced adversely, and sometimes how laws could end up being predatory in nature. As you guys know, the Saggy Pants Ordinance, when it was first passed, it had its challenges. The ACLU ultimately, had a big problem with it and the enforcement of it. Me personally, I was never a fan of the law. I thought always that our public resources can be used in a more efficient manner. I've never really been in favor of using public resource to criminalize, the very people who are putting up those resources. So, that's kind of the spirit behind the sponsorship of this item. So I won't be too long. I know we're kind of limited on time, and we've been here pretty late tonight. So I'll just end there, and I look forward to having a discussion with the rest of the board.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. I know that that legislation for future agenda items hasn't been approved yet. It's on our next commission meeting. So if that is something that you're sponsoring, as someone that's also young and would have been affected, and probably if I was on the dais, I would have voted against it back then, and probably didn't have the consideration of all people, especially us young folk, in considering this law. I will serve as a co-sponsor of that. And not only just for that, but also it's dated. There was a time in which it was very common. I think it's less common than it was before at the time that it was first proposed. So I do recognize the sponsor who originally pushed the item to do something to address something that was an eyesore on too many people, and which I also agree about. That was many years ago, and now it's time for us to rectify that. So I'm in support of it, and I will serve as a co-sponsor of that item. So, all right, any other reports, comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
is Vice Mayor finished with his report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to co-sponsor that as well. I think it was needed back then, but I think it served its purpose, and it's not something that we ought to be expending resources on. So I'd like to co-sponsor it as well.
All right. Do you have any report, Commissioner Kelly? You want to do that too?
It's been a long night. I'm just going to defer. I had meeting Monday Zoom, but I'll talk about that later. It's getting late. Thank you.
All right. Any other reports or comments?
No reports, but I would love to be added also. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bass. Any other reports, comments? All right. So with that, I do want to just give a shout out to staff, our PR, and many people that backed up. I think I may have to get somebody out. What in the world? Okay. Shout out to staff and also our residents. As we know, we're dealing with this coronavirus, and the city stepped up to do a mass distribution. So much shout out to all the staff, the PR, the commission for going out on a rainy Saturday to distribute thousands of masks to our residents. We do disposable masks, and also we got a donation of 5,000 reusable cloth masks from the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce to assist in that, and they provided quite a bit of happiness to many of our residents. So much respect for joining that effort. Please mask up. Tomorrow at a workshop, we'll talk more about our strategic plan, and that's where I'll probably go more into detail about many of the challenges we're facing as a city. With that, that concludes my report and the commission report. Madam Clerk, do we have any official board reports?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and do we have any board appointments?
No.
All right, Then we are at conclusion of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Kelly,
Somebody better say something.
second by Commissioner Bass. I want to thank everyone for feeling as though this is a long meeting, because actually history wasn't, but I want to thank everyone for our timeliness in this, and for staff and everyone apart. We'll see you tomorrow and also next week. Everyone have a good evening. Take care.
Night.
Meeting is adjourned.